Okay, guys, we're going to read part 3, section 2.3, called Beginnings of Agriculture. So on the left-hand side, you see the main ideas. The first farmers learned to grow plants and raise animals in the Stone Age. Farming changed societies and the way people lived. The big idea, the development of agriculture, brought great changes to human society. The key terms are Neolithic era, domestication, agriculture, and megaliths. So if you were there, let's go right here. As a gatherer, you know where to find the sweetest fruits. Every summer, you eat many of these fruits, dropping the seeds on the ground. One day, you return to find new plants everywhere. You realize that the plants have grown from your dropped seeds. How could this discovery change your way of life? Building background, the discovery that plants grew from seeds was one of the major advances of the late Stone Age. Other similar advances led to great changes in the way people lived. Okay, so this map shows early domestication. We're going to talk about what that word means. Okay, so this is this green area. We live right over here. Okay, so right over here, looks like Mexico and almost down through Central America. That's where they grew corn or maize, as they call it. And down here in South America, they grew a lot of potatoes. So we'll talk about what domestication means in just a moment. Okay, so it says the first farmers. After the Middle Stone Age came a period of time that scientists call the Neolithic era, or New Stone Age. It began as early as 10,000 years ago in Southwest Asia. In other places, this era began much later and lasted much longer than it did there. During the New Stone Age, people learned to polish stones to make tools like saws and drills. People also learned how to make fire. Before, they could only use fire that had been started by natural causes such as lightning. The New Stone Age ended in Egypt and Southwest Asia about 5,000 years ago when toolmakers began to make tools out of metal. But tools weren't the only major change that occurred during the Neolithic era. In fact, the biggest changes came in how people produced food. Plants. After a warming trend brought an end to the ice ages, new plants began to grow in some areas. For example, wild barley and wheat plants started to spread throughout Southwest Asia. Over time, people came to depend on these wild plants for food. They began to settle where grains grew. People soon learned that they could plant seeds themselves to grow their own crops. Historians call the shift from food gathering to food producing the Neolithic Revolution. Most experts believe that this revolution or change first occurred in the societies of Southwest Asia. Eventually, people learned to change plants to make them more useful. They planted only the largest grains or the sweetest fruits. The process of changing plants or animals to make them more useful to humans is called domestication. So here on this map, it was part of the map above the early domestication. Here's some other parts of the world where things were domesticated. So all that means is they were used for human consumption. So basically, things like corn, yeah, it used to grow in the wild, but now here in Brentwood, farmers all over grow corn. So it's been domesticated. It's in a controlled environment where they put it in rows and they grow it and they sell it and they use it for all sorts of things. Corn's used, to make corn syrup, which is like sugar. Um, and there's horses here, there's cows, sheep, goats. So all these sort of animals were domesticated. So if you've ever been on a farm, chances are you've probably seen some of these animals, or pigs, things like that. So at one point, these animals were wild, basically. And so these early people learned that, okay, these animals probably aren't going to kill us. These are not carnivores, these are herbivores probably. So, and they have things that we need, such as the milk or the meat or the wool, whatever it may be. And so they domesticated them for their own personal use, which is what we actually do today. We use these animals and these plants, we've domesticated them. Other animals that have been domesticated, cats and dogs. A lot of you probably have a cat or a dog or both. I mean, there's still wild cats and there's still wild dogs, but for the most part, cats and dogs have been domesticated. So that means we use them as pets. Okay, so that's one of the animals, besides these farm animals that's also been domesticated. Okay, so there's a picture in here, really good picture. Now in your book, this PDF is kind of one page at a time, so you can see the whole thing if you look in your book. It's a picture of an early farming society. It's this village in Turkey, and if you really look at this picture, it shows you kind of where these societies sprung up. They almost always sprung up near a river, and you could probably make a really good inference about why they grew up near a river. I'm not gonna tell you, but I want to see if you can sort of, again, make that inference about why most societies sprung up near a river. So it said it was about 8,000 years ago. The village was home to about 5 to 6,000 people living in more than 1,000 houses. Villagers farmed, hunted, and fished. They still hunted, traded with distant lands, and worshiped gods in special shrines. So they used these channels. They would dig out these channels here from the river nearby, okay, to bring water to their fields. And they usually had the farms outside of the. A lot of times they built sort of like a wall here, obviously well, we'll see if you can guess why do you think they built sort of in these sort of walled like um, kind of towns. And if you look, let me just scroll real quick. You could see the other side of it. Oops, too far. Okay, here's the other side where you can see the houses. They were made of wood covered with mud, and they didn't have doors. People entered on ladders through the rooftop. That's another inference you can make. Why did they not have doors? Why do you think they had the entrances through the rooftops here? They made wooden bowls, cups, potteries, and mirrors, and some were built as shrines and had small statues of goddesses and large sculpted bulls' heads. So let me finish this part right here. So it says the domestication of. Oops, sorry. I'm trying to keep up with this. The domestication of plants led to the development of agriculture or farming. For the first time, people could produce their own food. This development changed human society forever. Animals. Learning to produce food was a major accomplishment for early people, but learning how to use animals for their own purposes was almost equally important. Hunters didn't have to follow wild herds anymore. Instead, farmers could keep sheep or goats for milk, food, and wool. Farmers could also use large animals like cattle to carry loads or pull large tools used in farming. Using animals to help with farming greatly improved people's chances of surviving. Farming changes societies. The Neolithic Revolution brought huge changes to people's lives. With survival more certain, people could focus on activities other than finding food. Domestication of plants and animals enabled people to use plant fibers to make cloth. The domestication of animals made it possible to use wool from goats and sheep and skins from horses for clothes. People also began to build permanent settlements. As they started raising crops and animals, they needed to stay in one place. Then, once people were able to control their own food production, the world's population grew. In some areas, farming communities developed into towns. As populations grew, groups of people gathered to perform religious ceremonies. Some put up megaliths. Megaliths are huge stones used as monuments or as the sites for religious gatherings. Early people probably believed in gods and goddesses associated with the four elements: air, water, fire, and earth, or with animals. For example, one European group honored a thunder god, while another group worshipped bulls. Some scholars also believe that prehistoric peoples also prayed to their ancestors. People in some societies today still hold many of these same beliefs. Okay, so that is the section. So there's going to be some questions you're going to need to answer. It could be a quiz at the end. So if you need to go back and rewatch any of this, go ahead and do that. But well, before I stop, the summary and preview. Let's just summarize. It says Stone Age peoples adapted to new environments by domesticating plants and animals. That's kind of the big idea. They domesticated plants and animals. These changes led to the development of religion and the growth of towns. In the next chapter, you will learn more about early towns. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching.